Tonight, Toronto announces a list of potentially devastating service cuts if other levels of government don't step up.
We would be left with a city that can't work. We need that help now.
In the worst case scenario, some entire subway lines would have to close. Plus,
well, I don't think anyone will say it's enough, but it's something.
the province announces support for the hospitality industry hit hard by layoffs and closures. And Muslims across the GTA will have to celebrate Eid much differently this year, the pandemic affecting the festivities and local businesses. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. Mayor Tory is warning Toronto could be forced to make some unprecedented cuts, including shutting down 2 transit lines. The city is projecting a huge deficit this year. Costs are up due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and revenues are down. The mayor says he needs help to keep the city functioning. Kelda Yun has the details.
It's a massive shortfall.
Toronto alone is facing a $1.5 billion to $2.8 billion financial pressure this year alone.
That, without help, would force the city into a grim future.
Like nothing we've ever seen.
On the chopping block, TTC service would see a 50% cut. That would mean shutting down the Shepherd line and the Scarborough RT line completely. Lines 1 and 2 would see services cut in half. Streetcar service would also be reduced to every 10 to 20 minutes. And major bus routes, including Dufferin, Steeles, Jane, and Finch, would also be cut in half. The transit advocacy group TTC Riders says it's simply unthinkable.
I don't think people can imagine what that would be like, because people who are working in essential services, using transit to get groceries, are relying on transit. That's the only way they have to move around. It would totally devastate our city.
And it isn't just the TTC. Unless the city can get help for its budget shortfall, Toronto Fire would see a $23 million cut. Toronto Police would have to lay off 500 frontline officers. Childcare subsidies would see a $40,000 reduction. Half of the shelter spaces that have been added since the pandemic began would also be gone. 61 community centers would have to close, and long-term care would lose more than 1,300 beds. Tory says unlike other levels of government, municipalities can't run deficits. To make up the money, the city would have to hike property taxes by 47%. But Tory says that's not fair or practical.
Strong cities built strong economies across this country before the pandemic. And strong cities are going to be needed to rebuild and restart provincial economies and our national economy after this emergency. Toronto is Canada's economic engine.
In response, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing gave this statement tonight. We have established a technical table with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the City of Toronto and are tracking costs and revenue shortfalls. It is imperative that the federal government join us in developing a plan to help our municipalities recover from the impacts of COVID-19. The Premier's office also said Ford raised this issue of funding with the Prime Minister during their First Minister's call last night, and that Trudeau indicated that the federal government is willing to work with the provinces on this matter. Kelda Yun, CBC News, Toronto.
More pandemic restrictions are easing this weekend as the City of Toronto begins to reopen parks, but there is concerns about the increase in the number of new cases of COVID-19. Today, the province reported the highest number of daily new cases in 2 weeks.
We're seeing some peaks and valleys, but hopefully we're going to see the trend go down, because I know the last few days it's gone up and it's concerning.
Well, for the most part, the numbers have been trending down since late last month, but you can see the totals creeping up in the past few days. Today, health officials reported 441 new cases. That is the highest daily total since May 8th. And when it comes to testing, Ontario missed its target again today, the 5th day in a row it fell short. Now, with Ottawa urging the provinces to do more testing for COVID-19, the Premier says a new push will begin this weekend. Lisa Shing has the details.
As Ontario continues to fall short of its 16,000 tests a day target and well below the capacity of 20,000 tests, some news from the Premier on next steps.
We're going into senior centers, senior retirement homes, and testing staff and residents. We're going to follow up again with long-term care.
The province will also start testing all healthcare workers, truck drivers, and people who work in factories. This as experts are criticizing the government for not having a plan to comprehensively test for cases in the community.
What is that testing strategy? Knowing that we have that capacity, what is our plan to use it?
Only now are we hearing the province will start testing people who work in trucking and factory settings starting next week. And Ford repeated the plea that anyone with COVID-19 symptoms should get tested at an assessment center. So far, few have been going.
If I got to make robocalls to get people out, I will.
Ontario's top doctor said there might have been some confusion among the public, since for the last 2 months, people were told to stay home even if they had mild symptoms.
There can be some times where that consistent messaging does not get put through.
Today, the federal government said it's securing swabs and reagent for testing and helping Ontario with contact tracing. The Prime Minister says some provinces need to step it up.
We need to continue scaling up our testing capacity.
This epidemiologist says she'd like to see even wider testing in the community to get a sense of how the virus is spreading and where we should target our resources.
What we should be doing is looking to other provinces in terms of their testing strategies. And what you're seeing is that, they have more expanded testing.
Alberta is now testing any asymptomatic contacts of anyone who tests positive for COVID-19. As for Saskatchewan, it's expanded its testing criteria to include anyone going back to work. It's also doing mobile testing. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The provincial government announcing help today for the hospitality industry, one of the hardest hit during the pandemic. It's rolling out a series of online training courses to help workers when it comes time to get back to work. But is that enough for an industry that is struggling with layoffs and closures? Angelina King looks into that.
The pandemic has brought Donna Dewar back into the kitchen after the restaurant owner had to lay off 85% of her staff. Famous for their brunch, Mildred's Temple Kitchen, which also hosts events, has adapted by creating brunch in a box and other meal kits for pickup. They've also been live streaming cooking classes and sharing their most popular recipes online, trying to stay connected with customers amid closed doors.
We're shrinking our capacity. We're shrinking our business models. It's heartbreaking to say this, but there will be a lot of jobs lost in this sector.
The province hopes new online training courses will help.
I don't think anyone will say it's enough, but it's something.
The province is spending nearly $2 million on online training for hospitality workers. It includes programs on mental health, financial management, skill enhancement, and how to return back to work safely. It can also connect workers with employers.
This skills training will ensure these people can get back to work with the skills and know-how to help businesses adapt to the new environment.
But Dewar worries after all the extra training, will there be jobs for people to go back to?
There's so much unknown right now, and occupancy is going to be the big piece which will really dictate how well restaurateurs will come through this.
A union that represents 8,000 hospitality workers in the GTA will be running the training. It says about 95% of its members are currently laid off.
We know from experience from the SARS, hospitality workers are the last ones to return to work. And very hard hit.
Back at Mildred's, an empty dining room waiting for customers as people pick up their usual dine-in meals to go and prepare them at home.
The industry was transforming, had started that movement anyway, so now this is just catapulted it.
Dewar says once she reopens, she'll likely keep offering things like curbside pickup and possibly delivery, saying the changes implemented in restaurants now will likely continue long after the pandemic is over. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, one sure sign businesses are trying to get back to normal. Canada's oldest retailer allowed customers back in today.
It's been 66 days. Oh, wow. Woo! Okay, so we're excited to welcome you back in.
All right, folks, welcome back. We missed you.
Hudsons Bay reopened all of its stores in Ontario. Customers, as you see there, lining up, hoping to get the chance to shop once again. Now, in order to keep staff and customers safe, the store is following physical distancing measures and has even added extra sanitizing stations and cleaning inside. The store is also still offering curbside pickup. One of the baby foxes living under the boardwalk on Woodbine Beach was found dead last weekend. Now the Toronto Wildlife Centre is asking for the public's help to protect the fox family. Volunteers think the little one was killed by an aggressive dog. City staff have seen off-leash dogs charging and sniffing at the foxes. They're asking all dog owners to keep their pets on a leash and away from the fox family. That goes for humans as well. The Wildlife Centre wants everyone to keep away from the den to give the family some space. York Police announcing 17 arrests today in a gun and drug trafficking ring. And the clue that made all the difference in cracking this case? A simple crowbar used in a home invasion.
It was about 2:30 in the morning when 4 armed suspects forced their way into the residence. All the adults in the house were tied up, zip-tied, and forced down on the floor, where demands were made for money and other personal belongings. And an investigation started, which was dubbed Project Stanley. And this was as a result of us identifying suspects who ultimately purchased the Stanley pry bar at a local Home Depot.
And they say that crowbar you see being carried there is a brand that's only sold at Home Depot. So police checked video surveillance from nearby stores, and that helped to identify some suspects. The violent home invasion took place back in October. One man was assaulted and other adults in the house were zip-tied. Police carried out multiple search warrants around the GTA, seizing cash, drugs, a number of guns, and ammunition.
In addition to the armed robbery investigation that was the focus of this project, other serious crime was detected. That included the conspiracies to commit another armed robbery, the trafficking of cocaine, and a conspiracy to traffic in firearms. This was a very complex investigation. We saw officers from both our hold-up unit, the gun gang drug enforcement unit, and the mobile support unit essentially working around the clock for the last several months.
Police say this investigation crossed multiple jurisdictions, including Peel, Toronto, Durham, Halton, and Hamilton, adding many of the suspects who were already known to police. The investigation was dubbed Project Stanley after the brand of the crowbar that helped solve the case. This weekend, Eid will mark the end of Islam's holy month of Ramadan. The religious holiday is celebrated by thousands of Muslims across the GTA. As Talia Ricci tells us, COVID-19 isn't just affecting the festivities, but also the businesses that usually boom at this time of year.
Praying together, eating together, being together. Everything that usually comes with celebrating Eid will be different.
Now, due to the current situation, everything has to be online.
Including businesses. This makeup artist is teaching people her looks on Instagram.
I've been trying to create the perfect Eid makeup tutorial look. We love to dress up. That's what we do on Eid. That's what we look forward to all year round.
Dressing up is Ursula Fayaz's expertise.
Mine is a multi-brand designer studio. So we have like 9 stores here. And it looks like it's a mini Pakistan, they call it.
And now would normally be a time families would come to shop for their Eid attire. With new rules in place, Fayaz is connecting with customers virtually.
We're going live on Instagram and Facebook. And I've created a new show called Parent Fashion Hour, and people are really liking the innovative idea behind it. We have dress shoes, we have chappals.
One baker who specializes in extravagant, multi-tiered cakes has had to turn things down a notch.
The smallest I used to offer 6-inch cake, which serves about up to 12 people, and they don't want that big cake now.
Because this Eid, celebrations will be smaller. Tarek says customers love her mini cakes, but the new norm is bittersweet.
It makes me sad, honestly, and I love making cakes, big cakes. So I'll still decorate my house. We're not gonna gather, right? Huge parties.
A feeling that will be difficult to replicate, but will still be recognized, even within the confines of COVID.
Eid is very, very special for all of us.
It's still Eid, right? We are still celebrating.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, tonight was prom night, virtually at least, an online celebration for graduating students across the country. We'll take a look at that and how one church in Etobicoke is planning a drive-in service this weekend. Plus,
we had all those spring days where the temperatures were below seasonal. Now we're looking at daytime highs that aren't only seasonal, but above. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. Beautiful weekend ahead, especially Saturday. I'm going to break that all down for you, plus the heat and humidity coming next week. That's after the break.
We have a great weekend on tap weather-wise, so let's go straight to meteorologist Colette Kennedy so she can break it all down for us. Colette?
Oh, and I'd be so happy to do that, Mike. You know, when we have bad weather or temperatures are below seasonal, I almost feel kind of guilty having to give the forecast. But boy, these are just beautiful conditions to be able to relate to you. Now, tonight, a few little isolated showers still around the Niagara region. Otherwise, we're talking about mostly dry conditions overnight tonight, certainly through the GTA. A great weather day on Saturday. We may start off with a little bit of cloud cover, but really mostly sunny skies into the afternoon hours. And next week still looks like those temperatures will continue to heat up, but not only that, the dew point's rising. So it just means how moist the air feels. It's going to become humid. I may bring out the Humidex maps. It's going to be time for that. I want to show you daytime highs after yesterday having all kinds of records in northern Ontario. Today, record in the eastern Ontario. Look at this, Ottawa, 28. It's unofficial, but 28 degrees, a new record there. But elsewhere, still some nice readings. It's a beautiful day for Algonquin Park, so unfortunate that that some of these things we can't take advantage of, but if you can be outside and do it safely, we really have the conditions for it as we go into the weekend, especially for Saturday. But 26 the high today in Peterborough, Barrie at 25, Toronto 23, and Windsor, yes, cooler, just high teens because of some cloud cover and some showers there, and still looking at some fog. We'll be seeing that into the overnight tomorrow morning before we get rid of it. So that's the kind of situation there with that system just to the south, and you can see some of those isolated showers I was talking about for the Niagara region. We get much of this cloud breaking up as we go into Saturday. An isolated shower possible in southwestern Ontario and again Niagara area, but mostly we're going to be looking in those areas at a mix of sun and cloud, and elsewhere lots of sunshine. And then into Sunday, we'll get more of an enhanced chance of seeing some scattered showers showing up first in the morning and then a repeat into the later afternoon hours as well. So just know that's there for Sunday, and that's why Saturday's kind of looking like the better day of the weekend. 12 to 13 with some of that fog, so reduced visibility in parts of southwestern Ontario. A look at your temperatures, almost 5 degrees warmer than they were today back there. And for the GTA, lows Markham with clearer skies 9 with a little bit more cloud cover there, 13 for St. Catharines and points in between. And then tomorrow, Markham 27, 25 St. Catharines, and we'll see some nice readings there too for Toronto. A look at what's going on into Sunday, slightly cooler because of the extra cloud cover, but that heat that I mentioned in terms of not just the temperatures building, but the dew points going up. So Monday's going to feel like 30 degrees, and by the time we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, Mike, it's going to feel like 35. So never mind all those below seasonal readings. We're going way above seasonal with our temperatures. We should be closer to 20 for a daytime high.
We're making up for lost time, I guess. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a Trane.
Ontario has given the green light to drive-in religious services. One will actually take place this Sunday in a 900-car parking lot of the church on the Queensway. Today, one of the pastors explained how the service will work.
What we're looking at doing is we are setting up a little bit of a platform outside where we'll have 3 people only on the platform, 6 feet apart from each other, or 2 meters apart, and our senior pastor on what would be our educational wing of our building. It's a lower section. He'd be standing on the roof of that building, and that's like only 3 to 5 people maximum running the service. And the cars, we're going to be bringing them in from the east side and facing them all towards the building, and we are actually parking them. We've got our pastoral team coming in as volunteer parking guys just to start off. There's a handful of them. And we'll be actually parking the vehicles in such a way that there'll be a 2-meter perimeter around each vehicle. So people will not be allowed to leave their vehicles. They'll have to stay in their vehicles.
There will be 2 services on Sunday, each about 45 minutes long. During the pandemic, the church has been live streaming services. Normally, they'd be packing around 3,000 people into the pews here each Sunday. Well, from the drive-in to the drive-through, the Toronto Zoo is opening its doors this weekend. No need to pay for parking because you're never going to have to leave your car.
Our mission, connecting people, animals, and conservation science to fight extinction, is hard to do when we can't host guests. So the team's been incredibly resilient, offering a lot of choices digitally with our Facebook Lives daily, our virtual campouts. But it's been really tough on folks. We missed our guests. We're so happy to have them back, and we're looking forward to seeing how it's received over the weekend.
Well, looks like someone's already happy with this. The new Scenic Safari officially opens tomorrow at the zoo with tickets available today. You and your household will be able to take a drive on the wild side, visiting some of your favorite animals, all while staying in your car. Got a sneak peek of the ride today, getting up close with some zebras, flamingos, even a lion. Tickets for the safari must be purchased in advance online.
From the territories to BC to Prince Edward Island, welcome graduating class of 2020.
And here's a look at a nationwide virtual prom held tonight for grade 12 students unable to attend a real prom because of COVID-19 restrictions. A volunteer group called the Student Life Network organized all this. It was a huge success with some familiar faces dropping in. Graduating students from coast to coast to coast, all taking part. Congratulations, class of 2020. We'll be right back.
I already bought my dress.
I found the perfect tie.
We have an update tonight on a story we brought you last night about a pet rescue flight from the Cayman Islands to Toronto.
Hi! Hello! Hi! Hi, sweet girl! Hello! Oh, big jumps! Hi, baby! Hello! Hi! It was a nightmare being away from her, and now I feel like full again. Like a little piece of me was missing, and now I'm complete having her back.
This was the scene this afternoon at Pearson as some very happy owners were reunited with their pets. Some had been separated for months, forced to leave their companions behind when the pandemic hit in order to get on repatriation flights to Canada. Earlier today, the animals were brought from the Cayman Islands airport to begin the journey home. They flew on a charter flight dubbed Noah's Ark. It was organized by a Canadian woman living in the Caymans. On board the Ark were 55 pets and nearly 100 people. Some of the people on the flight chose to stay behind in the Cayman Islands rather than be separated from their animals. And that's our newscast for tonight. Tomorrow on Quirks and Quarks, have you heard the one about the joke-telling robot that walks into a bar? Bob McDonald will speak with the creator of John the Robot. It's an autonomous robotic stand-up comedian built to help engineers learn how robots and people can better understand each other. It can actually read the room in a club and adjust its joke set accordingly. And his jokes are actually kind of funny. It's a great story. You can hear it tomorrow at noon on CBC Radio 1. Have a great weekend. Good night.